Welcome, everybody, to the RTA webinar today, focused all around best practices for building your fleet command center. So we're ditching chaos. We're trying to create some of those best practices and make sure that everybody on the team in their proper role is updated and aware of what we're doing as far as a company. A couple of quick announcements as we jump in. For those who are participating, thank you so much again for being here. We are going to have a Q&A, or the Q&A option on this webinar is enabled. So please, as questions come up as you're going through, we will have time at the end to address those. Go ahead and throw it in the question. We do have some non-presenters that may be able to answer immediate questions, and any that are remaining we'll go ahead and cover at the very end. Also, in that same vein, this webinar will have a survey. And so we'll go ahead and drop that survey link into the chat. But as well, as you sign off at the end of the webinar today, you will see that survey. Please let us know, has this been beneficial to you? What kind of things you want to see in the future, and so on. As we get started here, I'll go ahead and announce my co-host, Nathan Schafer. Nathan is an experienced fleet manager with over 25 years in the fleet world. It has certifications like the CPFP and CAFM. Nathan ran a fleet of vehicles in Utah and has been a consultant, a trainer, and just an all-around subject matter expert for us here at RTA. So we're excited to have Nathan there. And then my name is Dallin Dastrup. I'm the product manager, or one of the product managers here at RTA. Spent time developing the product, testing the product, giving demonstrations on our sales team, and helping onboard and implement new customers. My role right now is taking the feedback that our customers provide and our prospects provide, and making sure they have a place in our product moving forward. As I mentioned today, we're going to be going over what chaos looks like inside of fleet operations and 6 best practices to help overcome that chaos, both digitally and just best practice in person. We understand that a system's only as good as its users, right? And users are only as good as their comfort level with that system. And so we'll be going over the command center mindset. How do I stay where I'm at as an administrator, as a command center head, and be able to be the champion of my own information? And then going over those 6 best practices for control and scalability, because we are looking for growth. We'll have some real world examples, and we'll be jumping into the Fleet360 product today and giving some of those examples. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll end with the Q&A. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn the time over to Nathan to talk about what does chaos look like.
Yeah, thanks for the great introduction, Dallin. One thing Dallin forgot to mention was the letters after his name, right? Because he just got that CAFM too. So, one of the things that we concentrate on here is trying to get certifications for everybody in fleet, and Dallin's the newest one to get that CAFM. So, congrats, Dallin. It's a lot of hard work. So,
Thank
all
you,
right,
sir.
with
It's been a
that,
ride.
yeah, it definitely is. All right, so with that, we'll jump in, right? So, if you've spent any time in fleet, I don't know that I need to explain what fleet chaos is. I think everybody's probably lived it at one point or another. But here's a few things that we'll talk about that kind of add to that fleet chaos that we can control, right? Some of those things are out of our control that create that chaos. But there's things that we can start to take control of and kind of centralize and try to eliminate some of that chaos. So think about all those paper logs, right? You got the clipboard with people filling out, fuel transactions or parts requests or whatever it might be, right? Anything paper log or forms. Paper gets lost. If it didn't get written down, it didn't happen. Well, sometimes it did get written down and then it gets lost and it still didn't happen. So, trying to, how do we centralize that or use a system to kind of overcome some of those challenges? The best one is go ask Carl, right? Those knowledge silos that somebody, or whoever it is in your fleet, right? There's that person that everybody says, oh, I don't know, but Carl knows, so let's go ask him. So really getting some of that knowledge silo or institutional knowledge into, SOPs or procedures or just instructional information so that everybody has access to it. Or missing or inconsistent documentation, right? So again, with the paper logs and stuff like that, you're going to be missing things get lost, filed away, and then they become missing. Or you have a fire like we did at the city and things get burned up. So, you're constantly firefighting and you're doing that reactive management, right? And we always talk about in fleet, especially with maintenance, we want to be proactive and not reactive. It's how we manage better. So if we're going to do that with the fleet in the vehicles, why wouldn't we do that with some of our processes and our paperwork and things internally to make, that process that much easier? So, a lot of fleets don't have a central place for SOPs, so standard operating procedures, right, or policies. or instructions, right? You may have a certain procedure or policy that directs you to do things in a certain way, and sometimes those are not centralized or easily accessible by everybody in the fleet. So it kind of creates some of that unintentional chaos. So the result of all that, right? You leads to more downtime, frustration, poor visibility. I will even say culture issues, right? People get frustrated and don't want to work there anymore. So it does really kind of build and fester and lead to a lot of other issues. All right. So talking about the command center mindset, right? We want to look at, centralized processing, real-time data. When I do training or I'm out with fleets, I talk about real-time data all the time, especially when we're posting parts to work orders, because I always see people are like, oh, like 3 days later, I had to reopen the work order to post parts. And it's like, well, we should be doing it real time, right? So real-time data, role-based visibility. So having certain things available to the parts people so that they can see, what their procedures are, policies are when they come across certain situations. And then repeatable, scalable systems. So how do we create a baseline of things that as the operation grows or as the roles grow, that we can start adding to that and keep scaling that to kind of grow with us, right? And then we can start setting up some team-wide accountability. So, as we talk about some of the things later, we can talk about statuses and things and track, accountability by things sitting in certain statuses. So it really does lead to more accountability.
Well, and I want to hit it there real quick, Nathan, with when we're talking about accountability, because this is the big one to me. Accountability becomes a four-letter word in the wrong organization, right?
Sure.
Because it's now I'm being held accountable. That's usually the negative connotation. But we can
Yeah.
focus on that when we have that command center mindset where it's not me versus you. It's not me accusing you of something. Accountability is on both sides. So
Yeah.
the leadership has the accountability to provide this kind of information, provide the centralized location, make sure that it's not only there, but that it's trained on. And then it's up to that employee to understand and follow those practices and procedures, which we'll get into. But really, accountability is a shield.
Yeah.
It's that protector on both sides. I mean, how many times have you had that conversation of, well, did you do it? Yeah, boss, I did it. Prove it.
Right.
And it is on both sides.
Yeah, and you hear that a lot, especially when people or organizations are instituting like GPS or camera systems. It's like, oh, Big Brother's watching, and it's like, well, no, we're just trying to hold some accountability for liability reasons, right? It's going to protect you probably more than it's going to hurt you, So kind of the same thing here. And I got some of that at the city when I started kind of self-reporting data, to my leadership. Everybody's like, well, aren't you afraid they're going to be mad at how poor the numbers are? And I was like, well, no, because if I don't start improving this stuff and they don't hold me accountable to be better, I shouldn't be here, right? Like I'm not the
Right.
right person for the role. So that's the mindset shift people have to take. And so glad you brought it up because it's a great point. All right, so let's talk about some of these, the 6 fleet command center best practices. All right, so best practice number 1. If you don't have an FMIS, right, we want to make sure that when you go through that process, whether it's putting the bids out or doing whatever you're doing, that you pick a system that matches your workflows, not the other way around. I have seen so many times where people will institute software because they're trying to fix poor practices or poor behaviors, and they think that the new software is going to solve those problems, right? So you need to make sure that the system's going to work for what your good workflows and practices are, and we're not trying to do it the other way around. Avoid the one size fits none software. Like, hey, we do this and it fits everybody, because not every software is going to fit every need, right? You want to look for that flexibility in the customization. You want a software that has the core basics, right? And those are set, but there's a little bit of flexibility to adjust with some of your processes, because everybody's process is going to be a little different. So it's every fleet I go to, right? They always do something a little different outside of those core basics. So this last one is great. Align with your shop, not just the admin. I do see a lot of times where like an organizational's IT department is the one that's in charge of software. So they're the ones out doing the bids, running through the demos. And they're like, yeah, this looks great. And then they buy it and institute it. And then the shop's like, well, this doesn't do half the stuff we need it to do, right? Because they didn't bring in the right stakeholders. So make sure, in fleet, we talk about this all the time with, hey, if we're going to buy a new asset, maybe we should talk to the people that are using it, right? To make sure that we spec it correctly for what they're actually going to use it for. So the same goes with software, right? Pick a system that matches workflows the shop wants to use, uh, and make sure that the end users have a good perspective of what it's going to do for them.
And I would take it that next step to not only pick a system if that's the situation you're in, but embrace a system that
Yep.
does everything you need to do. You may have that system, or you may be working toward that system with the tools and options available. But if you don't know what you don't know, then you
Yeah.
may have exactly what you need right in front of you. You haven't done the groundwork yet. And so it doesn't always mean go buy something new. It absolutely can mean use what you're using now properly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say training goes with that, right? Because softwares evolve. New things come out all the time, especially with the technology age we're in. So if you had a software for, 5, 10, 15 years and you've done training once, maybe it's time to revisit training because there's probably stuff that's been released into that system that you might not even be aware of. So, you know, keep that up with what Dallin says, get the training again, look into the system you already have, make sure you're using it to its capabilities. And if it's not fit, it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit. Like,
Now go pick a new one.
yeah, now go pick a new one and align with those things. So, okay. So best practices in action, right? So data management's huge in the fleet world, especially today where all this data is coming at us from all these different directions. So what do we use that for? Well, we don't just want to use our FMIS as a digital filing cabinet, right? We don't want to just put the data in and never look at it. So what are the things that we do with the data, or what can we do with the data that we're putting in to make sure that we're leveraging that FMIS? So good data management, right? We can measure performance. So we can look at KPIs and see where we are, the baseline, and how we're either improving or maybe we're falling down and what's causing that. Assess competitiveness, right? See how our technicians are doing with their, repair times, and are they, meeting some of those goals. We can identify trends. I love when everybody gets hyped up about AI, predictive maintenance, and it's like, well, if you were running reporting and things on your shop, you could have been doing that already, right? We just didn't have AI doing it super fast for you. Uh, so you can identify trends pretty easily if you're running reports consistently. Establish a culture of continuous improvement. And this is something I always strive to do when I was working in a fleet. There's always something to work on. There's always something you can be better at. Once you get this KPI kind of firing on all cylinders, like start working down the line to improve all the others, right? So it's continuous improvement. Making informed decisions. So, the old age of like, hey, I went to city council and I presented we needed 10 new cars and they asked me why, and I just said, well, because we do. That doesn't work anymore, right? So you've got to have the data to back up the decisions you're making, or at least you should have that data. And hopefully those people are asking for it. So if you're in this cycle of like, hey, we keep asking for stuff from our leadership and we never get anywhere with it, maybe look at what data you're presenting, and maybe you need to build that a little bit. And then creating a database of usable stats, right? So starting to look at those KPIs, um, benchmarks, where you're at, where are we going, set some goals, start working towards progress. I will say I worked at the city for a little over 6 years, and man, there was still a ton of work to do. We improved a lot of things and we changed a lot of processes, but there was still so much to do. So don't expect this stuff to happen overnight or even in the first year or two. Like, it's just going to take time of consistent, continuous improvement to get through this stuff. All right, best practice number 2. So choosing an FMIS your team will want to use, not just tolerate. So I think this goes a little bit back to what you were saying earlier, Dallin, with wanting to embrace it, right? Having something that's easy to use, mobile friendly, right? A lot of our fleets are out doing mobile work, road calls, things like that. We want the technician buy-in. Your technicians are probably going to be the most, you know, those people are going to be the ones that are using it most often and all day long. So we definitely want their buy-in, and we want them to be comfortable with it. We want it to be intuitive, for forms and data capture and somewhat easy to use. But then we also want to have additional resources for added help, learning. We have some built-in resource stuff within our product that is awesome, right? It's like some of that self-help section that really, 98% of the questions I think can be answered there, if not all. So, really making sure that the team wants to use the product, right? And there's resources in the product that they know that they can rely on, and that it's just intuitive and easy to use. So this is definitely a great best practice. All right, number three. So we're getting into some of this stuff now that, Dallin's going to be able to show you guys some great examples. But so we talk about digitizing your most critical paper requests, right? We talked about this kind of at the beginning in the agenda of like, hey, you have all this paper, these forms, stuff gets lost, we can't track things. So, digitizing this stuff and putting it into, the software really helps us keep track of it. So we get rid of that paper. We're not losing forms, right? We're hopefully eliminating some of the delays with paper forms. It's like, hey, I put it on your desk a week ago, and it's like, oh yeah, here it is, buried under 10 other piles of paperwork, right?
Folded
I
up with a
found it.
grease smudge on it. Yep.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, or that, right? Like technicians turn in paperwork and it's like grease prints on it. And I'll just be honest, not all technicians have the best handwriting. So sometimes it's like trying to decipher hieroglyphics, right? It's like, not sure what this says, but we'll work through it. So, digitizing some of that stuff will make some of that stuff a little bit easier, hopefully easier to read, easier to track, right? Because we're going to dump it into a centralized location. Um, if you got fuel card requests coming from outside of the fleet, maybe they're trying to purchase something and they want your approval. Uh, inventory requests from your technicians, like, hey, we seem to be using this part a lot, and it doesn't seem to be something we're stocking. Like, they could submit a request, and you can look at it and review it and say, oh, that's a good idea, right? So a lot of different uses. If we digitize or create some custom forms within the software. So we create these forms, and then we can create links and put those out, into the wild, so to speak. But we let other people in the organization that aren't necessarily users of the software, or they don't have a user login, that they can go out and fill those forms out too, right? So, if you're in a city organization and let's say the fire department needs a new fuel card, right, for one of their fire trucks, they can, fill that out from a link that you provide them, and it comes into the software and you can take action on it, right? So it gives you a lot of that ability to kind of move that stuff through there and see it in one centralized location and get it from kind of all over the place.
Yeah, and if I can give an example there, I mean,
Yeah,
jumping into RTA Fleet 360, this is a tool that we've recently developed over the past 18 months or so and have put into practice. The nice thing about this, Nathan, you kind of hit, there's a plethora of different options that every individual organization may have a paper request for, or maybe just don't have a request because simply we don't have a best way to track it right now.
yeah,
Something like I might need IT assistance. Well, maybe my FMIS isn't the best place to do that, but we don't have anything else. And so
yeah,
being able to come up and find those ideas. So we do have a form management option within RTA Fleet 360 that I can create and generate, which I'll go through probably a little bit later, create and generate these types of requests and completely customize them out exactly as needed. But where they end up going is as those requests are put in based on the type of user, based on the permissions that I have as a fleet person or as a Fleet 360 user, I'm going to be able to come through and see, perfect, I have a purchase approval that's been submitted, and I can go through and review the details of that actual request that was sent by the driver, by the department head. And like you were saying, Nathan, one of my favorite aspects of this tool is the ability to create external facing links. And so, whether this is an internal request that I have to get from an employee or from an additional stakeholder, or this is something that, as a community, as a government entity, I need to hear back from my citizens. Hey, they see that there was a vehicle parked that looks like it's damaged. I have a city vehicle that has a boot on it. Need to get a request around that. Well, perfect. I can take the details of these requests and of these forms, completely customize them out to my own needs, like being able to select what's the vehicle, if this is going to be something that's personal facing, I can put in, the uh, last four of my VIN number or my license plate number or my actual vehicle number itself. Go through and select, in this case, what is this? The new fuel card request. What type of fuel is going to be going into this vehicle to confirm that I have the right one? Who's the department that is linked to? Do I have any attachments? Who's the submitter? And all of this information, again, completely custom. But now I place this either on an intranet site that my internal team and my focus group members can see, or this is going to be something that's external facing. I get with my IT team and say, hey, we really want to put this on the county website. We really want to set this out so that, and maybe it's not something to do specifically with fleet, but more the organization. Um, let's get a 5 star, 1 through 5. How was your experience today, kind of thing, or let us know where you need improvements for our public works department or things like that. So it's just a way that I can digitize any of those requests that may exist. And then even there, and we'll, like I said, we'll get into it a little bit later. Even there, take it in steps, take it in strides, where maybe I'm the person that fills out part of this request, and then I need to send it on to Nathan to complete the request because it's only a partial from me, or I can request the information, but he actually gives me the details, the cost breakdown, the whatever, before it goes to finance. And so being able to have this centralized location where I can now filter and sort all of these approvals or all these request templates, all these forms, and be able to now action them, do something with them.
Yeah, that's some good points, and it made me think of something because I hadn't really considered, sending that link to the residents, right, working in a city. But what are some of the things that you might put out there for residents, right? And how's my driving? That bumper sticker. Maybe it's a hey, we saw a city vehicle doing this, right? And so they could submit that. Now it's going to come into fleet, and we'd have to redirect it to who it needs to go to. But that's easy enough. But something else I was thinking about that we used to get a lot of is like requesting a plow truck to come down their street in the snowstorm. Like, hey, we haven't seen a plow in however long, right? And we really would love to see a plow truck come down here. So like a plow truck request, I think would be super cool to be able to put out there. But there's just the sky's the limit with the custom forms. You can really build anything and have it come to that centralized location to take action on and really move through different steps or processes or to different people. And what I like is you can set different statuses for different forms, right? We can track how long it's been sitting in certain statuses so that, right, it leads to that accountability. So we know you've had the form sitting in your queue for 6 days, right? Like, why is it taking so long? So there's just a lot of really cool creative things that we can do with that. And it really centralizes some of that request and keeps that accountability, which I absolutely love. So it's a great tool. All right, let's go on to number 4. All right, so this is kind of a continuation, right? But we have the ability as we create these forms and we start putting stuff together to um, make sure that we can require certain fields. So if it is a request from, a citizen or somebody not in the fleet, we can say, hey, we really need to know the vehicle or license plate number, something. We can make that required so that they can't complete the form without it. So, it kind of gets away from well, I just saw a white truck drive by. I thought it was a city logo, right? Like we're actually asking for required information before we do something about it. So, we can set each and every field can be required or not. We can create areas to add photos or e-signatures. So as it goes through an approval step process, we're capturing signatures of people that are doing those approvals. We can set role-specific fields, which is super cool. So we can say, hey, this section of the form or the request can be filled out by the driver, but then this approval section has to be filled out by supervisor, manager, something like that. We can lock those different sections by role or permission, so that we're not filling out the incorrect areas. And then again, we can track those statuses of the form lifecycle. So, hey, it was submitted. We know that it's submitted. It's a new one. We need to take action on it somewhere. And whatever that status might be, hey, received, waiting on vendor, like if it's a fuel card request, like, hey, submitted to the vendor, waiting on the vendor, to get us the fuel card, whatever it might be. So there's a lot of really cool flexibility here. But, we can, again, make sure we're getting the data we need, make sure it's consistent, and then it's accessible in real time, right? So, and then everybody that has access to those forms can go in and look at the forms, right? And see if they need to take action on some specific form. So it just makes life much easier, and it keeps one of those processes right within RTA. And one of the biggest complaints I always had as a fleet manager was I come in the morning and I feel like I log into 10 different systems, right? I'm looking at fuel, I'm looking at GPS, I'm in my FMIS, I'm in the city's accounting system because I'm tracking budgets, I'm doing all this different stuff. And I really just want one place that I can log in and start seeing all this stuff, right? And that's kind of what we're doing with forms. It's like, hey, we're taking all that paper or some of that request stuff out of a different system, and we're creating a way for you to do it all within your FMIS, so you have one place to log in, which eliminates some of that chaos, which is great.
To provide kind of some examples of exactly what Nathan's talking about here, I pulled up one of these forms that just wanted to share, wanted to give that example. Like I said, when configuring, when setting up these forms, the customization, the detail is paramount, right? I don't want to use something that's been templated or reused over and over and over again from a different system or an old practice. And even on that point, okay, we've been using this form for a while and we're not getting the information we need. I'd like to make a change to it. By simply making a change to that form template, it's going to automatically update wherever else it might live. And so, from being able to take this element and looking through the options that can be added. You'll notice, I mean, there's a lot of very broad statement pieces here, things like a header, a short text field, a long text field. And the reason we keep it so broad is because that could be anything. This is more the answer that we're looking for, something like a phone number. Well, I still want to put in, okay, whose phone number? I want to give it a title. It's the customer's phone number, it's the department head phone number, it's the requester's phone number. And then there's space for a phone number, which is obviously just a field. I can do the same thing with a short text field. But now I can trigger that next step. It's a phone number, perfect. I can copy and paste it into my Zoom phone system or my internal phone system. A single choice, a multiple choice, and then Nathan hit on a couple of other kind of big ones, like an image. I need to be able, if this is some kind of a request because of damage or because of disrepair, perfect. Throw a picture in there. Picture's worth 1,000 words anyway. Let's save you the time of typing it out. Or something like a signature when we get through to that next step. And as I'm building this out and dragging and dropping and sliding these options around, is this a replacement vehicle or a new vehicle? Like Nathan was saying, well, a only a fleet coordinator or a shop manager are the ones that can fill that element out. And so by marking it as such, by setting it as required, and by saying only these specific users can answer that in particular question, or even further and say, well, access to this form itself is actually limited to the driver or the fleet coordinator within these specific facilities. And so without that specific user or without that idea, now obviously that's internal. If I make this if I copy this link and add it to an intranet site or an external facing site, that kind of goes away. But in this case, if we're talking specifically about RTA users, then once I get to that next step, they do have to be validated. They do have to be a specific level. But then, like Nate was saying, that those statuses being able to show through and create just specific to this form only. I want to be able to see, okay, when it's been opened and track that accountability, when it's gotten to a level one permission, a level two permission, and when it's been closed. This is a new vehicle request. This is kind of an important one, kind of a big one. It's got to go through multiple layers or multiple levels. And I want to make sure that not only is that visually represented, so I can easily see it when I'm going back and looking at my form queue, but then also when I filter it down and find out, okay, which ones are assigned to me. Well, it is coming to me, but I'm the level two guy. Nate's got to get it past level one. Ring, 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 Nate. I need you to fill this out, but I got to get this in before the end of the month. And so being able to see at all elements, all areas, and then obviously be able to add notes in. So customizing these fields out, or customizing these forms out, not just for the elements that are necessary, but the actual workflow and the process that's going to be required for accountability to make sure that everybody gets the information, the requests that they need, and ensuring that really in the end, when we make adjustments, we put these forms, these requests into action, that the right people are involved and the right people are being notified.
Yeah, I love the flexibility we have around custom forms, and I think it's just going to continue to evolve and get better and better, right? As we keep moving along, and something to kind of plug in is workflows, right? Like custom forms are going to tie into a workflow engine that we're developing, and it's still in testing phases with some people, but that is going to be like next level game changer, right? Because the system, depending on reviews and changing statuses, is what's going to kick emails out to other people for approvals and things. So, if you want to get some automations, especially around custom forms and workflow stuff, keep your eyes open for when that starts to get released out to everybody, because it's going to be a game changer.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Best practice number 5. So documenting critical SOPs so they're followed and not forgotten, right? Institutional knowledge lost. I think, in the fleet industry as a whole, we've been talking about this for years. As the boomers, are retiring. I didn't coin that term, so I'm just repeating it. Some of that older generation are starting to retire and leave, and they're taking some of that knowledge with them, right? There was not a good way for succession planning or handing some of that stuff off. And so, these people are retiring and they're taking a lot of institutional knowledge away. And we see this a lot, and I see it a lot, especially when I'm out working with customers. A new fleet manager or director or somebody will get hired, and they'll come in and you'll start talking with them and just kind of finding out about them and their history. And, some of these people are getting pulled from other areas of the organization and they don't have any fleet experience, right? But they're really good at running operations, in other areas of the organization. So they're like, well, we need somebody, and you're really good, so here you go, right? You're now the fleet guy. And it's I wouldn't say it's scary, but it's happening so much more often nowadays than it than it was just a few years ago, that it's a little worrisome, right? And we want to make sure we're helping those people and get them up to speed. But this is one way that you can do that, right? Is documenting those policies and those procedures and some of that institutional knowledge in something we call Fleet Wiki, right? It's adding custom pages within the FMIS so that you can have detailed out instructions, SOPs, easy to follow guides for techs and staff. If you have certain procedures for certain repairs, you could build those and stick them in there, in the maintenance and repair section for them to reference. You can create a landing page, right? And it could be for critical training, it could be for critical updates or announcements. And again, regular update. We want to regularly update and add information. It's a live living document. We don't want to like build this and forget about it, right? SOPs are constantly being updated. Procedures are changing, so we need to be updating, right? But this is another thing that we released not too long ago that is some people have really embraced this and they use it really, really well. Think about building some custom training pages, for specific procedures for your organization, especially if you're in a large organization. Like, hey, this is how we want you to do this process. You build that and put it into a Fleet Wiki, then everybody that accesses the system has access to that training procedure. They don't have to call you. They don't have to dig around and try to find it. It's centralized, right? So it's documented, it's there. They can be followed and not forgotten, right? So Fleet Wiki is another one of those things that's going to be a game changer, I think, for people once they really start to see the power of what it can do for you. So, Dallin, I'm sure you've got some examples to show them on this one too.
I do, yeah. So, and I wanted to, I was waiting, so I wanted to touch on one of those last elements that you talked about, how we can immediately update information and everybody gets access to it.
Yep.
Now, how often, I know at least inside of RTA, we experience this all the time, where in our Teams messages or our Slack messages or in our emails, announcements go out. And
Yep.
then it actually happened this morning. We were getting ready for this webinar, and I messaged the group and said, "Hey, I don't have the invite. I don't have the link." And we had to look back and say, well, we sent it, and did you get it here? And did it end up here? I had to go search and look, and of course, have a mini heart attack because it was 5 minutes before we started. But it's okay, we got here.
Right. Right.
But in the end, something like that. How often do we get information that is very important that needs to be updated, and I don't know where to look? Somebody else thought they changed it, they updated it. Whatever the details are. Where here, if I have, especially like you mentioned, a large organization, I have somebody who's doing a great job tracking their parts inventory. They have amazing practices in place. They're checking every day, observing and recording 20 to 30 parts per user before they go home. Awesome, guys. Why are your numbers so much better than everybody else's? Can you standardize that practice? Give me a step-by-step walkthrough. We're going to go ahead and post it into Fleet 360. And so being able to have something like I have created here under my home option, a custom homepage, and everybody that jumps into my system, or everybody that comes in here, this is now their landing screen, where I'm going to want to be able to go through and update and basically create almost like a resource page or a web page. And there's no limit to what I can, how much information I can have on each of these individual screens. And I might create sub pages under my custom homepage. And these are going to be my custom technician homepage and my custom parts manager homepage. These are going to be here's the requirements of how to organize and operate for your day. So being able to get important information, creating checklists, creating out charts, and then obviously being able to hyperlink and detail out additional attachments, because this may be the landing site for all the information I need to share, but it's going to be actually another site, another software, another login, or even just something like this. I have an Excel doc that I've built out and created that's going to be my checklist. Have you gone through and done these things when performing our biweekly inventory? So I create a custom homepage. These can be set all throughout the program. So I might have one there we go. I have like a parts management. I actually went through the other day talking about updating and creating best practices using modern technology. I had somebody ask me, "Hey, what are the best fleets out there doing when it comes to part management to run an inventory?" Exactly what you just mentioned, Nathan. Somebody who was a great manager in another area was brought over to run parts because they said our part store is a mess, which I'm sure you've never heard before. And
I've maybe seen a few.
maybe one or two, right?
Yep.
Our part store is in disarray. We need to get better about inventory. You're a great manager on your team right now. I understand you don't know anything about fleet parts, but come use those organizational skills and bring it over here. Well, perfect. I did the same thing. Basically, what I told him to do: jump into Chat GPT and say, give me a step by step of what exactly are the best public managers or public parts managers doing to record their best inventory practices. And I built that out as a doc that I could print out and share to whoever I needed to, and got those roles specifically identified, the schedule, the step by step process. And now this isn't just something that, oh, hey, don't we need to do inventory sometime? When was the last time we did it? You know, we're dropping questions.
Yep.
We're able to just jump directly into answers. And these types of wiki pages, like I said, they're completely editable. Jump through and make the throw in the hyperlinks, the attachments, the checklists, the graphs, whatever I might need to standardize. And those are all based on permission. I might be a manager that sets this up, and I need my technicians, I need my parts guys, I need my office intel to go through and read it and have access to it. But again, there's that other aspect that we talked about in the very, very beginning of great, the system's awesome, lovely. Can I get the involvement? Can I get the buy-in from that end user? Do they know where their resources are? Do they know what those resources contain? Perfect. So it's not just putting it down. We do have to take those next steps and make sure that it's communicated out properly.
Yeah, these are great tools. We've got several customers that use it really, really well, and really detail out exactly what you're saying, procedures. Um, the landing page, I've seen that used really well too for, company-wide announcements, updates, changes to different maybe inspections that they've got posted in there. So it's a really good tool. You really can leverage that to share that information. I know, years ago we had somebody ask about, well, it'd be really cool if we had somewhere we could dump our procedures for these repairs, you know, and I'm like, man, if Fleet Wiki had only been around, a few years ago when they were asking those questions. So really think about that, some of that, you may have special procedures for repairs that you guys follow, because sometimes we find things that the manufacturer puts out there need to change a little, or we can make it a little easier. So you could document that, right, and throw that stuff into one of those and really get it out to your techs across the whole organization, right? If you've got multiple shops across the country or across the state, this is a great way to share that across, that whole organization very quickly.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, as updates are needed, I
Yeah.
have a custom homepage created for those specific users and have them earmark it or favorite that because it's a web browser.
Yep.
Have them earmark it so when they click into Fleet 360, that's the page they land on. And if Nathan, you need to make sure that update's there. We're gonna make it big letters. We're gonna make it red. We're gonna make it bold, and it's gonna be the first thing they see
Yeah.
when they log into their program. And so, yeah, it's hard to deny the accountability there when we
Yeah.
have the right tools and we use them properly.
Yeah, and even think about some of those annual trainings that always come through, right? Whether it's, online security training or the HR stuff with, sexual harassment and all those things that you typically get in an organization on a yearly basis. If that's coming up, hey, throw it out there, put the links to the training that they can complete, and it's all in one place, right? They don't have to, hey, did you get the email from HR about the training? Oh, what email, right? It's like, hey, you logged into Fleet 360 today. There was your announcement. There was a link to your training. Why isn't it done, right? So think about using it in some of that ways too. It's not always just around the fleet. It could be, right? But it could be to help with some of that other stuff too. All right. So, again, best practice number 6, we're going to create that shared visibility across departments to avoid the knowledge silos. And again, we've talked about this a bunch. You get your techs, drivers, ops, everybody on kind of that same page, always accessible info, and it's updated in one place. And then we can include links, right? Like I just mentioned, hey, if HR's got a training that you have to watch, dump the link in there and put it in with your announcement so that every morning when those techs log in, they're seeing it, right? And they're like, oh, I got to do that. And then they forget. And then the next day, oh yeah, I got to do that. They're going to get tired of seeing it and they're going to eventually do it, hopefully. Um,
Hopefully.
yeah, so it's a great resource again, just to dump that stuff in there and continually update, get those announcements out again for the whole organization, right? It doesn't need to just be our shop or this location. It's going to be the whole organization. Everybody that's logging in and using the system will get those updates in that landing page. So it really does make everything quite a bit easier to share information.
Well, and even combining, I mean, the two tools that we've talked about today are those forms and the Fleet Wiki. We know
Yeah.
we can create a link to the form and put it out on an internet site or put it out on a website. Well, we can do it inside of RTA as well. So have that centralized command center of forms that based on your role or break it down by role, break it down by department and say, hey, if you need one of these, you need a fuel card replacement, you need a new fuel card, you need whatever it is with fuel, here's all your links to the forms that might be, because I might not give access to that user to be able to see the form templates or be able to see the form queue. It's all permission based, but even the most limited end user might be able to see that list of forms. So create a page for them, and uh, this is now our repository for all forms and links that to get information, to get help, to get replacement details or whatever it is, and link them all back to that page. So it's a nice little circle right there from within Fleet 360.
Yeah, I mean, even under the maintenance and repair section, right? You could dump one in and say, hey, this is the technician's page, right? When they click into that, maybe it opens sub pages, but that main page has those forms that maybe the technicians use regularly, right? If it's a, part stocking request, or we even, we did this classic connect for forms, and somebody brought up like a boot request. They're like, yeah, we provide boots every year, but they have to fill out a request form. It's
Yeah,
like,
there you go.
drop that in there, right? And they could fill it out, and then you get it and take action on it. So just a ton of options, and just it's amazing how much you could do with this stuff.
Perfect. I love it. So obviously, we want to make sure that these tools are being used properly. That the end user creating and building those tools is trained on it. So we do have the resources out there available. But then again, I've hit it multiple times. I want to hit it again. Being sitting at the top of the pyramid and looking out and being the person that receives all this information is great. But if there's no data to receive, there's no forms that are being filled out, there's no standard operating procedures that are being viewed and being followed, the failure's not on the person that isn't doing it. The failure is really on me because I'm not communicating. I'm not passing down that information of resources. If the resource, what is it? The old, if you build it, they will come.
Yep.
It's, I have to build it, but then I have to make sure that they're aware that those are options as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And the landing page helps do that too, right? When they log in, and it's kind of front and center. So,
Exactly.
all right. So command center in action. If we start to put some of this stuff into place, and we're standardizing things and centralizing information, you're going to start seeing some of the reduced downtime, right? Because people are going to be spending less time, especially technicians, searching for stuff, right? If we have it centralized, faster onboarding. So think about with new employees, especially that fleet manager that comes in that's never worked in fleet, right? If we've got policies and procedures in place, they can read through those and start to understand the procedures and things that we do in our organization. So they're going to onboard much quicker. Even new technicians, right? It's just going to help get everybody up to speed much faster. Real-time visibility, just like Dallin said, if as soon as I update it here, it immediately disseminates out to the entire organization as soon as they look at that page. Audit readiness, right? So assisting with trying to get some of that audit stuff together for any audits if you guys are doing those. I don't know if anybody's been through audits, but I've done a DOT one. They're not fun. So having that information kind of centralized helps with some of that stuff. And team-wide accountability, right? Holding and setting some of those statuses, being able to track who the holdup is with approvals, kind of leads to that accountability. And going to the technician and say, hey, did you turn in the form? And they go, yeah. And then you go back to the system and you're like, oh, yeah, they did. And it's been sitting on the supervisor's queue, so to speak, for 3 or 4 days. So yeah, it really helps, kind of see the bottlenecks and move stuff through the process with that accountability. So again, the tools are just enablers. Your system is the solution. And then obviously making it available and everybody aware of those tools will help make that solution even better.
All right. Well, we're about to start wrapping up here as far as the information. I want to throw a huge thank you out to Nathan as our subject matter expert. His experience has really helped us a lot here, not only at RTA but obviously with our customers as well. For experiences and for those who are looking to improve, to increase, to become better, because that's what we're all trying to do, right? We all want to be trending up. The Fleet Success Playbook is available. We'll leave this on screen for just a second for those that don't yet have a free copy and want to scan that QR code. It's our guide to building a safe, reliable, and efficient fleet that provides exceptional service. This is all based on firsthand experience from the authors, interactions with our customers here at RTA, as well as with fleet managers who have been there and done that, whether they use RTA, whether they use Fleet 360, whether they use a different program, or the old school guys that were in paper and pen. Want to make sure that knowledge is being passed down. So please feel free to grab yourself a free copy. Also, if you've enjoyed this and are not currently subscribed to our Fleet Success Show podcast, our CEO, Josh Turley, is one of the hosts, as well as Steve Saltzgiver, Fleet Hall of Famer. Mark Canton, who ran the fleet at Fordham University for upward toward 20 years, is currently head of our product. It's not a place where we talk about Fleet 360. We talk about RTA as often. It's really just the purpose of enhancing fleet management topics and understanding in the world, trying to give back some of that knowledge and experience that's happened and avoid the silos. So again, please go ahead and scan that QR code. Get updated. We have over, I think we're right at about or just over 200 episodes now. Been doing this for a long time, and it's absolutely amazing. Especially coming to or coming from work. Get yourself in that right mindset. As a reminder, outside of RTA and Fleet 360, the software that we provide, we do have inside of these walls over 450 years of fleet experience. These subject matter experts, you see Nathan right there in the middle. And so these guys and girls who have come through the process, come through the ranks, that have led successful award-winning fleets, they're available for anybody, not just RTA users. We do have consultants, we have trainers that are ready and available. Most of these folks have been featured on or have run some of those podcasts we just barely talked about. We are very interested and very involved in not allowing that silo to walk out the door. To the point that actually some of these guys that have retired and left fleet, we went ahead and pulled them back in because that information is not worth getting lost. And now we're going to go ahead and jump into our to our Q&A. Just as a quick reminder, if you do have questions that we haven't covered up to this point, please throw it into the Q&A. I know it looks like the chat's been pretty active. I'm going to start going over some of those questions at this point, and I apologize if the questions have already been answered. I'll go ahead and read these starting at the top. Are the forms, are there forms that when filled out can be updated to the system and the information gets transferred into RTA, like an intake form? So any forms that currently do exist do need to be recreated within Fleet 360. But then if the question is there currently a way for forms that do exist? Can we load them and have like an AI tool or something like that, scan them, get the data out? Not at this point. That would be a great option for the future. Yeah, right now the mechanic would either have to fill it out manually and then somebody have to enter it into RTA, or take advantage of that best practice of technology. And that would be one that we convert the paper form into a digital form and make that available for the mechanic. Next question, can any user complete a form if they have the form URL, or can users in can only users in Fleet 360 complete forms? I think I kind of shared this one, but yeah, if I create the URL, it's still going to look at permission based. If I do set that line up or I set that item up as a required field or a permission based field, if it's just somebody that's out there that doesn't require a login to RTA, they will not be able to fill out that field because there's no what's where I'm looking. There's no accountability to it. As far as the actual answering itself. You'd be able to fill out the rest. And for those who are going to be setting up those forms, I would just recommend just don't make those fields required. So that way the person who's not allowed to fill out that section can go ahead and submit. The person who's required based on permissions to fill out that area is going to be able to do that at the next level. But yeah, if I make that URL live, it's still going to look at those permissions. If I'm logging in or trying to do that as a person who's not an RTA user, I'll still be able to fill it out as long as that permission is not restricted for me. What contract level gets access to forms? I'm guessing, Drew, that question is as far as like the tier of Fleet 360. Forms begin to be included at Diamond, and they are an add-on as well. And so if you're not don't need all the rest of the features of the Diamond tier, if you're Platinum or Gold at this time, you can contact your customer success manager, and we can get those available to you separately. Looks like we have a fueling question in there, an ETA of when pumps and tanks are coming. The answer is, I thought they were live. If they're not live, it will be maybe a week or two. I can check with my team that's over that. Emily, if you wouldn't mind jotting that question down so we can respond directly back to a better time frame on pumps and tanks. How do we implement these things without upper management buy-in? Might need it's kind of hard. We might need a little bit more information on that. I don't know, Nathan, if you want to take something like that, how do we implement changes without upper management buy-in? I mean, in the beginning, it's do you have permission to access these features? Without it, it's going to be very hard without their buy-in.
Yeah, I honestly, this question kind of sounds like maybe he's working in the shop or maybe shop supervisor level, and he's like, hey, fleet manager doesn't want to change or do these things. But, I would just say work up a use case and how it would help, make the operation better. Um, and just ask them if they're willing to do a test case, right? Like, hey, let's just create one form for this one thing and let's see, how it improves things or how much better it is to do it this way, right? Um, going to the approach of let's just test it. Let's start small and not like, hey, let's change everything all at once is probably the easiest way to kind of get some of that buy-in. And just to follow up kind of with the one question below that is, how do you avoid this status quo of we've always done it that way? And I would say it's the same way. Like, let's just test this and see if it changes and makes it better or not. You do see that we've always done it this way a lot in fleet, especially if those supervisors or managers have been in those roles for many, many years because they have their process and they don't want to change. And so sometimes it's tough. You just got to keep at it. I would just say, hey, let's just try this test case and see what everybody thinks, and see if they're open to that. That's the best advice I can try to give you at this point without knowing a little bit more.
Yeah, I do remember. I don't know if you were here when we had this, Nathan, but a couple of years ago when we were our RTA gets a lot of attention, a lot of focus as an organization for our company culture.
Yeah,
Something that our CEO Josh has put a lot of time and a lot of effort, blood, sweat, and tears into. And I remember when we were first kind of identifying what that culture was going to look like. One of those questions that came up was exactly this: with how often or when do we accept the answer? So there's a bit of a change of mindset. When do we accept the answer of that's the way we've always done it?
yeah,
Both internally and from our customers. Like, hey, I need this feature, I need this report, I need this filter. Well, why? Like, well, because that's how we've always done it. And so he created kind of this whole area around always ask why, because that's the way we've always done it isn't enough. And
yeah,
so going into it with that mindset and changing around that mentality just a little bit, it's something that's it's a little bit out there. It's not a specific checklist item of things that to be done, but having that mindset of are we doing this because it's the best practice or because it's the way we've always done it? Are we going to continue down this path because it's helping us succeed, it's helping us improve, or am I simply just checking a box because so and so asked for it? And not only for me doing that, but pass that down the line as well. Allow yourself that leadership mentality of when someone asks you for something, a report or a test case or something like that, be willing to ask. Okay, I can do that, but why? And bring them up. And by doing that, both looking up and looking down, you start to generate that mindset of in the entire organization, not just yourself.
yeah. And usually that response comes from a place of because that's how I like it and I don't want to change. Not because it's the way it works best. It's just
Mhm.
because that's the way I like to do it,
I like it.
honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And it's an answer I used to hate that I would get when I would start asking, well, why do we do this process? Like, why don't we try this process? Well, we've always done it that way. Okay,
That's the
but
way I
why?
like it. Yep.
Yeah, and that's usually the root cause is because that specific person that does that process likes it that way. So sometimes it's a tough shell to crack for sure.
And then the last question we have on here, does RTA have the ability for drivers to fill out a DVIR and it goes straight to the fleet coordinator? Excited? Yes. So we do have both an internal tool called RTA Inspect, where drivers can go around. It's a mobile device or a mobile tool that drivers can go around, perform their pre-trip, post-trip inspections, submit for repair requests, things like that. And they automatically pull into to RTA. The other side of it is we do integrate with nearly every DVIR or telematics group, at least for sure the popular ones. And there's questions about that, you can always reach out to our support team or your if you have if current RTA customer, reach out to your customer success manager, and we can find out. Do we work with X? But yeah, that's the way that it works. Is the drivers fill that out as long as the integration is configured. It lands here inside of Fleet 360, and I have a queue, just like we were looking at the forms request queue. I can see the vehicle, the issue that was submitted, who submitted it, when it came in, and then I can even get a notification pop up to my mobile app and let me know, hey, a new driver report has been submitted. So done multiple ways through multiple different routes. In the end, exactly like with these tools. We're just trying to break down those issues and those areas of communication walls, and make sure that everybody knows what's going on. All right. Well, it looks like we're at the end of those questions that have come in. Again, greatly appreciate those who have taken the time and stuck with us through the entire webinar. Please be on the lookout for that survey that's going to pop up as we close out here. Let us know how this was helpful to you, or if there's anything in the future that you'd really like to see, learn, and understand more about RTA, Fleet 360, or our internal purposes. And then also be on the lookout for a follow-up email that should be coming out with the recording details of this webinar, as well as information on the next one that we do. Appreciate you again. Again, I'm Dallin Dastrup. Nathan Schafer is my counterpart, my co-host on this. We'll go ahead and throw our information up at the end for the last few seconds. And thank you so much for your time.